but it's also a process that I had to improve on massively and actually tweak and refine for my trading. So an app that I utilize right now is called Brain FM. It's a really good app, especially for utilizing flow state. And what it does, it uses binary beats and things along those lines to trigger flow state. What's good, guys? So welcome to this video. If you're new here, consider subscribing. My name is Michael and I'm a Forex trader documenting my trading journey through social media. Now in this video, I'm going to be taking a little bit of a detour away from trading specifically, but at the same time, I'm going to be keeping that in mind and diving into focus. Over the past 3 years since I've been in my trading journey, I've ultimately come across these habits, developed my own routine of how I optimize my focus in the best ways. And today I'm going to be giving you 5 practical tips on how I best utilize focus, and hopefully you can take away some actual practical tips that you can apply into your own routine. Bear in mind that this has taken me quite a while to develop all these habits and put them into one place. But what I will say is that if you can apply one of these things and slowly start to develop this habit and this routine, then I think it's going to optimize things in terms of your focus and overall productivity. So hopefully it's going to help, hopefully it's going to provide value, and that's the main intention of this video, to give back. So let's dive into focus. Starting off with point number 1, so I want to go into deep work. So if you haven't checked out the book called Deep Work by Cal Newport, highly recommend checking it out. And it's just good to have that really clear insight onto the science behind deep work, shallow work, the difference between the two, and just how you can apply it into your own life. So we're going to go into it quickly today, but it's a really good concept to dig your teeth into and actually understand on a deep level, because deep work is something that's becoming more and more rare during this time of social media, technology, like all these distractions come into our world. So it's important to keep focused, have that deep sensation of work. So deep work is essentially the uninterrupted long periods of time where you're just ultimately focused on the task at hand. You're not too focused on anything around you. You're just totally consumed in the task at hand. And that's where you often experience that flow-like state where you're just producing some type of work that is hard to replicate because of the value, because of the energy that's just going into the task. Shallow work is pretty much the opposite. So it's kind of like doing emails, documents, running errands, things like that you can do in almost a semi-distracted state. So you don't need to be totally focused on the task. You can kind of be doing a few things at once. You can kind of be multitasking. You don't need to be fully there. So these are personally things that I will do more so at night, and deep work is something that I'll do more in the morning. Just to show you how powerful this technique is, if you start to study some of the most successful people in different industries, you'll start to notice a common trend. So, for example, Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, obviously did very well for himself and is still doing that to this day. He used to have what he used to call think weeks, and essentially he would isolate them off for different weeks during the year, often twice a year, and actually just isolate himself off from the entire world. No distractions, no phone, no things like that, and just actually take the time to write notes, think of ideas, think of his vision, think big thoughts and stuff like that is how he describes it. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter books, she checked into a hotel when she was writing the last few books, I think, and she would just isolate herself that way. So she would totally be consumed in that book until she finished it, and she actually finished it in the same hotel. So I don't think she meant to stay the whole time, but because she just loved that sensation of pure focus, she just ended up staying. So if you start to study these people and how they operated, how they created some of the most deep, fulfilling, valuable work, it's often a time of like deep work and how they utilize that best focus. Just to finish off this point before we move on, I just wanted to throw a couple of tips in there that I personally utilize within my routine that actually helps me optimize that deep focus. So for me personally, one of the main things is to set a start time and end time. The reason being for this, if you don't set an end time to your deep work, I find that it's so easy to just slog the whole day out. So for example, if you're just working all day on deep work, you want to get loads of things done, you'll kind of just space the whole day out. You'll space your goals out for the entire day, and it won't be as productive or as efficient as maybe it could be. So what I find is that if I've got an end time of, let's say, 3 p.m, I know that I've got till, let's say, 9 a.m. till 3 p.m, I've got 6 hours. Deep work, I know that, okay, well, there's almost a sense of urgency to completing that task, but at the same time, you're in deep work, you're still focused, you're still in that creative mode. But I find doing it that way is just a lot more productive and efficient to actually get the most out of your sessions, rather than just slogging the whole day out. And also as well, actually having a dedicated workspace for your deep work session. So I almost try to think about it in terms of like a sanctuary. So this is like essentially my trading sanctuary where I'll take my trades, I'll focus, this is where my deep work happens. So my brain will automatically associate this space with deep work, with productivity, creativity, and just overall focus. If I was to go in my bedroom or like downstairs and start working, I wouldn't naturally be able to then duplicate that same energy into the task. I may still be able to get in some deep work, don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to have that same connection within my mind to say, okay, this is a space, now's the time to get into work, to almost have that anchor to then trigger you into that flow state. So moving on to point number 2, this ties in very nicely to deep work sessions, and that is work blocks. So essentially setting periods of time for each task that you're completing. So for example, if I know that I'm going into the day ahead and I've got 6 hours of deep potential focus, then I'm going to try and optimize that and make it more efficient as much as possible. So how I do that is set a schedule ahead of time. Obviously I have to be a little bit discretionary because of trading. So if we have more impulsive week on the charts, things like that, then I'm naturally going to be more in tune with the charts, less of this type of work. But in those corrective weeks where the markets kind of needs more time to develop, things like that, then I'm naturally going to apply more of these things into my life, into my routine. So what I essentially utilize is time blocks, work blocks, and I'll have 50-minute sessions of pure intense focus, followed by a 5 to 10 minute break of just refreshing my mind, getting my energy back, refocus, before then duplicating the process and getting back into more work sessions. And I'll just duplicate that process probably 4, 5, 6 times depending on the day. You have to be a little bit discretionary, and also something to bear in mind is that some days you're going to be more focused, you're going to be more in the flow state more than others, so it's just bearing that in mind. Everyone has good days, everyone has bad days, so it's just about when you have those good days, leverage it. And ultimately when you have those bad days, that discipline of actually the routine will carry you through. I'm sure there's plenty of different apps that you can use on the desktop and on your phone as well, but what I personally use is something called Be Focused. I've got the pro version, it's very good. I can actually have it on my desktop, so I don't need my phone in the room at all. Cut out those distractions as much as possible, and I'll actually be able to set the time periods ahead of time. It will tell me when my focus session is over, it'll tell me when I need to take a break, things like that, and it's not going to be an exact science. If I run over 10, 20 minutes, whatever it is, because I'm totally consumed in that task, then I'll just let it be. I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to come out of a flow state if I don't need to. But at the same time, if I come out of that flow state 5 minutes before the break, then I'll just naturally take a break. So you have to be a little bit discretionary with it. But at the same time, it's very, very key to actually apply this into your routine. I personally found that over the last 12 months. So this next point is something that I'm super passionate about, and it's something that I've tried to optimize as much as I can over the last probably 6, 7, 8 months of this year, which has been super, super beneficial for my not only trading, but overall self-development and overall deep work focus. So this is put your phone on airplane mode or turn it off and put it in another room to what you're working in. So for example, if I'm working in here, then I'll have it in my room, I'll have it in a different room so it doesn't distract me. As you know, social media is just one big distraction. Yes, it can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing if you're trying to focus, if you're trying to get some deep creative work done as well. How this process came about is that you can probably resonate with this, right? You wake up, what's the first thing you probably do? You probably check your phone, check social media, scroll through Instagram, check people's stories, check people's notifications, messages. There's so many distractions on our phone these days. I would find myself turning my alarm off. The very first thing that I do after that is check social media, and it would just put me in a reactive state of mind for the day, which is not optimal for trading. So with trading, you want to be calm and collected throughout the day. You want to be in a proactive state of mind, which is why I utilize things like meditation, things like that. But ultimately, putting yourself in a reactive state of mind through getting dopamine in your brain, things like that, from scrolling through messages, doesn't really help with trading. So I ultimately try to eliminate that as much as possible. Took me a few weeks, and now I just don't really check it. You have to have an element of discretion though, for me personally, because if I'm going to take a trade or manage a trade, I'll need to then take it off airplane mode to then take the trade or manage the trade, which is something that I do have to bear in mind. But it comes with it, and 95% of the time I will just keep it on airplane mode in a different room, and that just ultimately helps me have that distraction-free, uninterrupted periods of time where I can just utilize deep focus and just pure creative work. So point number 5 is flow state and music to actually trigger that flow state. So you'll often hear athletes talk about this on podcasts or stories or books, whatever it is, that they get into a certain flow state or they get into the zone, as they often call it, right? Essentially that's similar to deep work in the respect that you're just fully present on the task at hand. You're not engrossed in the past or anything like that. You're fully concerned on this present moment. Your emotions are not really in it too much, you're just fully in flow. That's why they call it the flow state, obviously. I've developed this process through my teens because I used to play a lot of snooker, as you've probably seen on previous videos. So I naturally had to be in the zone a lot of the time, which has helped my trading. Obviously coming into trading, utilizing that process a lot, so that's been helpful. But it's also a process that I had to improve on massively and actually tweak and refine for my trading. So an app that I utilize right now is called Brain FM. Really good app, especially for utilizing flow state. And what it does, it uses binary beats and things along those lines to trigger flow state. And this is not wishy-washy talk, this is actually science-backed. There's studies on the website that actually show the brain development and stuff during flow state and how this music actually triggers flow state and gets you into the flow state mode. So super beneficial, definitely check that out, and flow state is such a big part of it. But ultimately, if you can get some sort of classical music or music without any words preferably, that essentially act as an anchor or a trigger to flow state that you keep coming back to, then I think that's going to be really beneficial for you guys to take away and apply into your own routine. So I've experimented with a lot of things. I find Brain FM sticks with me. I've tried classical music in the past as well, which I'll sometimes go back to, but overall I really like this platform and the overall sounds that it produces as well. So definitely experiment. It's something that you experiment with. It isn't going to be a one thing that suits all, so definitely experiment for yourself and utilize that routine and see what works for you. But yeah, I think once you go with that, it's super beneficial. So last but not least, point number 5 is daily goals. So this is something that I've been utilizing over the past 2 years to ultimately get closer and closer to my goals and just take those off over time. So essentially the psychology behind this is that if you imagine you've got 5 daily goals, right? If you tick off every single one of those 5 daily goals over the course of a year, think about how many goals you're going to have to tick off. And as a side effect of that, you build that unshakable belief in yourself over time that whatever goal you write down on paper, then you're going to tick off. So it's ultimately about the psychology behind this as well. But what I personally do to utilize this is I set 5 daily goals. Now I'll write these down the night before I get into the day ahead to ultimately know exactly what I'm going to be working on going into the day ahead, which is super powerful. And each one of these goals is in alignment with my quarterly, my 6-month or my annual goals. So it's in line with those longer term goals, and I just break it down into smaller steps. So if I have a goal, for example, to become a full-time trader, one of the daily steps that you could take essentially to get there, essentially doesn't sound like it's going to compound into much, but for example ASR or backtesting or actually working on your trading in some sort or another. Now over the course of a day it may not look like much, but over the course of 90 days or 100 days, whatever it is, those things start to add up, those things start to compound, and you'll be surprised how much progression you can make in just a 90-day period of time. Like, it's very, very powerful. And you can probably see throughout talking about these 5 tips how they just build into each other and how they just set yourself up for success, not always short term, but over the medium and to longer term, they really do have an impact on your growth. So definitely something to consider. Overall, hope this video has helped. It's been a video that I've wanted to create for a little bit of time now, just to give back, just to give that value, and just to share the experience that I've learned over the past 3 years since being in my trading journey. So it's been really beneficial for my trading. Not, as I said at the beginning of the video, not trading directly affected, but it ultimately has an effect on trading for your learning process essentially, and just ultimately putting habits in place to then take care of the growth, take care of the progression within your trading. So whatever area you're in, whether it's trading, whether it's entrepreneurship, whether you're a student, whatever it is, these tips can be applied into your own life, and just let me know how you get on with them. Hopefully it helps. Hopefully you can apply it into your own life and it benefits you in a positive way. So, but yeah, really enjoyed this video. Hopefully it helps you, and I'll see you in the next one. Speak to you all soon. With